This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, available on iOS and Android. Hey guys, I decided to do a rather clickbaity video on various references and homages that Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire are filled with, and there are tons. I entitled the video 100 references, but I'm going to go way over that. I'm not really counting. There will definitely be a part 2 to this, and probably a part 3, and I'm obviously going to miss many more references than I name, but you can fill the comments with the ones I've missed and call me a horrible person and all of that. I'm going to try to go roughly geographically about these references, but I'm going to have various tangents, so bear with me. And before we get into it, first a word from our sponsor. Forget everything you think you know about mobile games because one of the most ambitious RPG projects of 2019 has just been released and it's going to change everything. Introducing Raid Shadow Legends. Playing Raid is the most immersive experience you'll find on a smartphone, and it can only really be compared with the biggest PC and console titles. And it has all of the features you'd expect from a brand new RPG title. Amazing storyline, awesome 3D graphics, giant boss fights, PvP battles, and hundreds of champions to collect and customize. I never expected to get this level of performance out of a mobile game. Look how crazy the level of detail is on these champions. Here's my most powerful character, Athel the Blue. Here's Gwyneth, my war priestess, she keeps everyone alive. Akash, my inappropriately dressed dark elf sniper. And of course, the heart and soul of the team, Tiffany. And here we are, trying to take down a dragon. Take that. How dare you hoard wealth. Raid is getting big real fast, so get in early. Starting now will give you a huge head start. There's also an upcoming special launch tournament with crazy prizes. Please don't forget to join my clan before that. Just search for Knights of the Vale and hit me up. So go to the description of the video now and download Raid only through my link to get 50,000 silver immediately and a free epic champion, part of the new player program, courtesy of the development team. And now on to the references. So the title for A Song of Ice and Fire is actually based on the anti-war Robert Frost poem Fire and Ice, though George R.R. Martin himself first uses the phrase ice and fire in his novel The Armageddon Rag. A song is an old favorite title that he likes to use for various stories and collections, including A Song for Leah, Songs Dead Men Sing, and Songs of Stars and Shadows. Westeros is obviously based on Western Europe, with the wall being a reference to Hadrian's Wall between England and Scotland, and perhaps the poem Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Some people think Westeros looks like a mirror image of Britain, while others think it looks like Ireland upside down. The uneven seasons of Westeros come from a few old George R. R. Martin stories, but most notably, Bitterblooms. Bitterblooms also has vampires who come in the middle of the night, much like the others, as well as the practice of leaving old people out in the wilderness to die, just as the wildlings and Northmen do. There's a character named Old John in Bitterblooms who tells stories like Old Nan, and the story is named after some blue flowers that grow in the winter, much like winter roses. There's also a holdfast in the story called Harrenhal. And speaking of Harrenhal, the sigils for the Lothstons and the Wents of Harrenhal likely comes from Batman. To the very north we have the Land of Always Winter, which is first used in a story called the Ice Dragon. The Ice Dragon also being a constellation in Westeros. Although not in Westeros, the Ice Dragon takes place in the north along the King's Road. And it's in this story that we also hear about the terms Winter Child and Summer Child. The protagonist, Adara, is a sweet small girl without emotion who rides dragons, and she's likely the inspiration for a character named Jaehaera Targaryen. At the wall we have a whole slew of characters that come from various places. Pip comes from Pippin and Sam from Samwise from Lord of the Rings. Alliser Thorne is likely named after Lamy Thorne, a character from George R. R. Martin's Night Flyers. Harry Hal comes from Starlady. Darien the Singer is likely named after Berion the Singer from Windhaven. Donal Noy is likely named after Donal Grain from The Child Cycle by Gordon R. Dixon. Lark the Sister Man is likely named after Lark from The Armageddon Rag. Sir Patrick is named after one of George R. R. Martin's friends who likes the Dallas Cowboys. And 1-1 the Giant is named after Phil Simms of the New York Giants. 1-1. Leathers is a character from George R. R. Martin's novel Fever Dream, with Bowen Marsh almost certainly being named after the protagonist, Abner Marsh. Abner Marsh's company is the Fever River Packet Company, a river that appears in the neck, and I'm guessing this is where House Marsh resides. There is also a Fever River in Dubuque, Iowa, where George R. R. Martin used to live. He describes the city being incredibly cold in the wintertime, and this is a man who lived in the city of Chicago for a number of years. And so many of the descriptions of cold weather in Ice and Fire are likely inspired from our author's time in Dubuque. In the neck we have Greywater Watch, which is named after the short story Men of Greywater Station, which involves prophetic dreams. Greywater Watch Moves, which is likely a reference to Howl's Moving Castle, a children's book by Diana Wynne Jones. Howland Reed being the Lord of Greywater Watch, thus Howland's Moving Castle. In the north, of course, we have the Starks, whose rivals are the Lannisters. This is meant to mirror the Yorks and the Lancasters of the War of the Roses. Robb Stark and Lyanna Stark are named after the protagonists of A Song for Leah, Robb and Lyanna. The house words, "Winter is coming," comes from a story called "And 7 Times Never Kill Man." The White Knife is a river in the story, and the pale child Bacalon, one of the gods at the House of Black and White, is the god that the antagonists worship. The story revolves around some ape-like beings that worship some pyramids, and we find monkeys and pyramids on Cedar Isle in Slaver's Bay. The Werewoods, a telepathic network that's worshipped by the children of the forest and doubles as an afterlife, is an amalgamation of aliens from various stories by George R.R. Martin. This includes And 7 Times Never Kill Man, where we have a primitive race worshipping a telepathic network of pyramids, Sand Kings, where we have faces on the telepathic beacons, and A Song for Leah, where the telepathic network is a stand-in for God and the afterlife. However, the term werewood is actually named for Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead. Incidentally, Direwolf is a Grateful Dead song, Steal Your Face, a Grateful Dead album, Dark Star, a Grateful Dead song. The term Green Dreams first appears in a George R. Martin story called Guardians about a network of aliens speaking telepathically. Skin changing is a term our author has used before in a story called The Skin Trade, as well as one called In the Lost Lands, the primary shape changers being the wolves of Winterfell or the bats of Harrenhal, is a reference to werewolves and vampires. And the idea that werewolves and vampires could fundamentally be the same thing is something explored in Fever Dream. Hunting these potential shape changers, as the Boltons do, is something that appears in many George R. Martin stories. This includes The Skin Trade, Dying of the Light, and Fever Dream. Ramsay's boy Sour Allen is named after Sour Billy from Fever Dream, and Yellow Dick is named after Yellow Jack or Yellow Fever from Fever Dream. Moving over to the Vale, it's perhaps named for the Tempter's Vale from Dying of the Light. The Eyrie is a location from Windhaven, with Arryn being both a location and a character in the story. The historical Shara Arryn, as well as Shara the Witch Queen, are named for Shara, the protagonist of the Lonely Songs of Lauren Dor. The Lady of the Vale, Lisa Tully, is perhaps named for George R. R. Martin's co-author of Windhaven, Lisa Tuttle. The protagonist of Windhaven is Maris, and we have many characters named after her, including Black Maris, Pretty Maris, and Maris the Maid, the daughter of Garth Greenhand. Garth being another character from Windhaven. Maris in the story is famously a fisherman's daughter, and Ned supposedly has an affair with a fisherman's daughter when leaving the Vale. There's quite a few places that seem to have gotten their name from Windhaven. There's an Iron Islands in this story, an Eastwatch, a Storm Town, a Kite's Landing, and various characters get their names from this story, including the wildling Princess Val and Sorella Sand. The Sorella from Windhaven is also a dark-skinned, talented student from the south. There's a great council in Windhaven, a trial by combat, and there's a network of messengers who are like maesters, who are not trusted, and who may be changing the messages. Windhaven even has a mad landsman who, like the Mad King, is paranoid, frightened, cuts himself, and is killed by his own landsguard. Maris has dreams of falling and flying like Bran, has a poignant I promise scene like Ned, and Maris has a smell of sickness from her childhood like Dany, though Dany's lemon tree is likely from the Peter, Paul, and Mary song. George R. R. Martin liked this song enough to include it in the Armageddon Rag. Also in the Vale, we have the character Marillion, who is not actually named for the rock band Marillion, but is an homage to Tolkien's Silmarillion, which the band is as well. We also have the Lord Protector Littlefinger, who is largely based on a character named Arkin Rourke from Dying of the Light, a spurned, jealous puppet master who turns the protagonists against each other. There is also the Night Lamp of House Burrell, which is a reference to Jack Vance's Night Lamp, and speaking of Jack Vance, George R. R. Martin has quite a few references to him in the Riverlands. The two House Vances are named for Jack Vance, with Wayfarer's Rest being a reference to Lyanna the Wayfarer, the sigil being a reference to the eyes of the overworld and the Dragon Masters. Lyanna Vance is named for Lyanna the Wayfarer, Rialta Vance being named for Rialto the Marvelous, and Impheria Vance being named for Impherio. The other House Vance is at Atlanta, named for Aunt Ranta from Bad Ronald, Ronald Vance also being named for this. Ellery Vance is named for Ellery Queen, a pseudonym of Jack Vance. Kurth Vance is named for Kurth Gerson from the Demon Princes, and Hugo Vance for the Hugo Awards. The sigil for House Vance of Atlanta contains dragons from the Dragon Masters and towers from the Last Castle. So within the Riverlands, people are referred to as Rivermen, a term used for people who navigate the Mississippi River in Fever Dream. The main house Tully, again, is perhaps derived from Tuttle, There are some historic Tullys that have some recognizable names, a Grover, Elmo, Kermit, and Oscar Tully, who are obviously named for Muppets. River Run is named for the first word of Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, and the word also appears in the last sentence of the book in a circle, River Run the word being ambiguous about whether it's a noun or a verb in the present or the past. The historical Melantha Blackwood is named for Melantha Jurl from Night Flyers. The Bracken men who help Catelyn in Game of Thrones are named Larys, Curliket, and Mohor after Larry, Curly, and Moe of the Three Stooges. House Frey seems to be named for the Norse god of fertility, Freyr. The Brotherhood Without Banners is of course an homage to Robin Hood's Merry Men, with the drunken religious Thoros of Myr as a stand-in for Friar Tuck, Angai the Archer being a stand-in for Gilbert Whitehand, and the roving singer Tom of Sevens being a stand-in for Alanadale. In the Riverlands there's a House Woad whose sigil is a hedgehog. Their 2 keeps were made of wood and burned down during the War of the Five Kings, but House Hogg's keep was made of stone and survived. This is a reference to the 3 Little Pigs, and the reference works a little better knowing that Hogg is the nickname for the magazine Hedgehog in the Armageddon Rag. Moving into the Westerlands, we hear of a House Betley, a House Sarsfield, and a House Banefort, with their sigils being a blue beetle, a green arrow, and a black hood. These are references to the old comic book heroes, the Blue Beetle, the Green Arrow, and the Black Hood. There is also a House Vickery, a reference to Jan Vickery from Dying of the Light, and Sandor and Gregor Clegane's names are taken from characters from the short story With Morning Comes Mistfall, though the Hound's look of having a half-burnt face is taken from Breton Braith of Dying of the Light. Of course, the Lannisters and their sigil are based on the Lancasters from the War of the Roses, and the House words Hear Me Roar are actually from a female empowerment song from the 70s called I Am Woman. Joffrey Lannister may be named for Geoffrey Lyon from the Plague Star. Tyrion Lannister is largely based on a drunken chess-playing dwarf from a George R.R. Martin short story called Under Siege, though the name Tyrion may be taken from the 1981 movie Dragon Slayer. Jaime is largely based on a golden-haired protagonist, Annelin from In the House of the Worm. The story deals very much with a man's existential crisis, where he transforms from being a self-consumed man into caring about society. Annelin, like Jaime, even wants to bed a woman who looks exactly like him because he's so self-absorbed. The name Jaime, though, may come from Jameson's World, a planet featured in the short story This Tower of Ashes, where people from Jameson's World are called Jamies, though there also is a character named Jaime Lynch in the Armageddon Rag. And I have not gotten close to the end of my list of references. We will have to continue on sometime in part 2. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.